Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Patricia Aguilera, and I am the Federal Work Study Coordinator at Cal State San Bernardino. Today, along with my co-hosts, Dora Silva and Sarah Garcia from ITS, will be assisting me throughout our presentation today on hiring a work study student during the 2021 academic school year. Because of COVID-related reasons, we've had to change our process to an online hiring process versus students coming directly to the financial aid office, picking up forms, taking them to you to sign. All signatures will be done through Adobe Sign this year, along with completing the actual documents you will need to complete the hiring process. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by going over some of the agenda items that we'll be discussing today. And then Doris and Sarah will assist in a demonstration on how we will be initiating the new online hiring process this year. This morning, we're going to go over the basic eligibility requirements, policies, and procedures of the Federal Work Study, Supervisor and Timekeeper responsibilities, the new online hiring process, the background checks for new student employees, the work study hiring firm, terms of employment and work authorization, how to post a work study job, and this is primarily for the brand new student versus your continuing student, our placement and deadlines, how to report federal work study time on the timesheet. We have some new instructions for that as well. Terminating and separating student employees, and just to give you a heads up, the supervisors must attend the entire session in order to receive credit and your certificate of attendance at the end of the session today. So here are the basic eligibility requirements for students to be eligible to participate in the Federal Work Study program. They have to be enrolled in a minimum of 6 units if they're an undergrad. If they're post-bac, credential, or master's students, they have to be in a minimum enrolled in 3 units. They have to be in good academic standing and maintain satisfactory academic progress, because we want to give you a student who isn't struggling academically and is able to balance both work and school. They have to demonstrate financial need, which the financial aid office does that when they complete their FAFSA application. They have to have a Federal Work Study award. So prior to initiating or requesting a work study student, you need to connect with your student, and they can go to their My Coyote portal and show you verification that they actually have an award on their financial aid award. During the fall term, all students must be placed in remote jobs or scheduled to come onto campus under the direct supervision of the work study supervisor and MPP approval. And that's just for the fall term. We'll find out more information for spring when we're notified. Here are the policies and rules of the work study program. Here are the policies and rules. Please pay close attention to them. Everybody, student, supervisor, and the program administrator, or your MPP, all must adhere to the work study student employment policy that is posted on the campus website, the terms of employment, which outlines basically the rules of the work study program, and labor laws. Work study positions are real jobs, just like the ones we hold. So they're entitled to their 15-minute breaks, lunch breaks, etc. We ask that you monitor the work study students' earnings not to exceed their work study award, both annually and by term. So what I would recommend is when you receive the work study paperwork, when it's all done and said, the student was awarded a 5,000 work study award, create a spreadsheet. And just every month subtract how much they've earned gross, and that way you know you don't go over their allocation. In the event that the student does go over, you'll be providing, on-campus supervisors will be providing their alternate string number that authorizes me to go in and take the money the student was overpaid at 100%. For our off-campus employers, if you permit or allow your student to work more in excess of their work study award, you will be receiving a purchase order for 100% of the overage as well. Students must stop working on the last day of the academic year. If they drop to less than half-time, they withdraw or they graduate. Students must stop working if funding is exhausted by the student or the program. So we always put out more work study because we know not all students are going to earn their maximum. Some students are going to graduate or separate from the program. Notify the work study office immediately if any changes to your student's employment, such as a change in supervisor, timekeeper, termination, pay rate, etc. Supervisors need to submit such requests on the work study change termination form, which is available on the Financial Aid Office website under application and forms under work study. If a pay rate is requested, a pay rate increase, say you submit it today, which is August the 27th, it will not become effective until the first day of the following pay period, which would be September 1st. So even if you turn in a request, say September the 5th, it will not become effective until October the 1st. So please keep that in mind when you're requesting pay rate changes, and all requests are subject of approval by the work study coordinator. Also very important to remember that timesheets are due on the 1st of the month, not the 5th. That's when payroll needs them. I need them on the 1st because I have to reconcile the federal work study on a monthly basis. So we have a new work study email so you can send everything directly to us at workstudy@csusb.edu, and there will be no late submission. So if it's going to be late, just send me a quick email, because after 5 days, if we have to contact you and it becomes a pattern, then you may lose your ability to participate in the work study program and hire future work study students. Here are some of the work responsibilities for supervisors. We ask that you determine the wage rate for your student. There's a wage table on our website. Minimum wage right now is $13 an hour, and for our instructional student assistant programs for the America Reads, America Counts program, the minimum is $14 an hour. We ask that you supervise your student workers because they can only work for their assigned supervisor or employer. If there is a change in the supervisor or timekeeper, notify the financial aid office by completing the work study change termination form so we can update. If a supervisor transfers to another department, we also need to know if the student is going to be transferring with you or if the student will be staying and getting a new supervisor, because a new supervisor will also have to complete the training before they will be permitted to supervise a work study student. Make sure you provide an orientation on the job expectations, comfort breaks, training, phone usage, etc. Kind of like your onboarding. Monitor the work study earnings not to exceed their award. Verify enrollment each term. We will verify it when we do the initial hiring paperwork in the fall, but in the spring, you will need to request verification the student is enrolled, and that can either be done by your department budget person or the student can just simply give you a copy of their class schedule. And then we also have an annual evaluation, which is usually done during the spring term, so probably around May. We ask that the supervisors conduct an annual evaluations on the work study students' performance. And at the same token, we ask the student to evaluate their experience in the federal work study program as well. In order to post work study jobs, and this is primarily for if you're looking for a brand new student, this is not a student that you're going to rehire from last year to this year, you can post the position on Handshakes. They're subject to approval by student employment. Use the wage table to determine their hourly wages. If any wage starts at $15 or above, you have to provide a justification for that. Job listings will be removed from the Career Center, and do not post work study jobs on the campus or BB listservs. That's a big no-no. So these are just some instructions how to navigate through Handshake. Again, all of this is available on the Career Center website. It's going to ask you to provide just some basic information that include the name of the department, the job descriptions, qualification, pay rate, link to student's employment, supervisor, contact information, etc. Background checks. Those are now required for brand new students primarily, and the hiring department is responsible to determine whether or not the student will require a background check. Human Resources will contact the student to schedule the appointment for the live scan. So Students employed in the following areas will require a background check if they have regular or direct contact with minors, access to patient drugs or medication, access to stored or criminal offender records, access to or control on a regular basis amounts greater of 10,000, etc., or requires access to level 1 data, which in my area that would include, access to, PeopleSoft. If the student is just going to be a continuing student and being rehired in the same position that they were formerly doing, you can check off the hire exemption box. They would only require a new background checks if the job duties have changed. Placement and deadlines. So the first day of fall employment began on August the 17th. So that was the official first day of the fall semester. Student assistant placement deadline is October 30th. If we haven't met our goal, then we may extend it an extra month, or if you need more time, again, just send me an email and I'll work with you if funding is available. Our instructional student assistant program, those positions are open until they're filled. Timekeeper responsibility, and this is for the on-campus program, because for off-campus, I'm your timekeeper, okay? So again, I can't say it enough, it's very important that the work study earnings are monitored and they're not exceeding the work study award. Submit the listings by 10 a.m. to payroll, and I believe, payroll needs that information by the 5th, but I need it on the 1st. Submit copies of the student listings, timesheet, and class schedule to the new work study email at workstudy@csusb.edu by the 1st of the month. If any changes are made to the student timesheet, I need a copy sent to workstudy@csusb, and you need to list revised on it, so I know there's going to be a change. If the student is separating, I need final hours need to be sent to both payroll and to the work study email. Report hours only for the appropriate pay period. And what that means, like for the August pay period, it includes July 31st to August 30th. So a lot of students and supervisors sometimes forget that they needed to include, July. Most months are okay, but there are some months that overlap. So I always provide a copy of the payroll calendar, and it's also available on the work study website as well. Make sure you're observing the maximum daily, weekly, and monthly hours. Daily, they cannot exceed more than 8 hours. Weekly, not more than 20. And monthly hours are posted on the payroll calendar. For time reporters reporting work study hours, you will post those under job code 1871. And for our on-campus ISAs and College of Ed, that's under job code 1151. I do that again for our off-campus student populations. And again, if work study students exhaust their funding, you may hire them and pay them out of your own departmental funding and report those hours under job code 1870. Okay, so time reporting. We have a new work study timesheet that we'll be showing you shortly, but it's located on the financial aid website. It computes the students' daily, weekly, and monthly totals. Hours are to be reported in military time. And what's new this year is instead of using a colon between, so like 8:05, 8:005, students will just be required to put a period instead of a comma. New work study timesheet includes Adobe Sign for the student, supervisor, and administrator to certify and sign the work study timesheets. Use the payroll calendar on the website for payroll deadlines and paycheck disbursement dates. Plus, I always send a monthly reminder to all the supervisors. But the first couple of months, we're going to be doing a lot of the hiring, so I'm going to be collecting the emails. Make sure that you're using the calendar until I'm able to create a listserv to send you the monthly reminder. Students are paid once a month, just like state employees. However, they get paid around the 15th of every month. Make sure you report hours in the correct pay period. As I said, some overlap. Attach the class schedule to the timesheet, but in the new timesheet, you'll be able to attach the document into the Adobe Sign document. Make sure you're reviewing the timesheets for any class conflicts. I know with the online classes now, we notice a lot of students were working during their class time, because they had some flexibility, but as a general rule, do not schedule students to work when they're scheduled to be in class. Also, another area that we came into a lot last year was that if a student was working, say Monday, Wednesday, 8-hour days, they were not reporting a 30-minute unpaid break. It's part of labor law. We're entitled to a lunch break, so are students. So make sure before you just sign off, you're actually reviewing the timesheets, because what will happen is we do a secondary review in our office, and when we find these type of conflicts, we have to contact the student and the supervisor to correct them and resubmit. Again, if there's a pattern in which supervisors are just signing off on these timesheets and are not reviewing them, you could potentially lose your eligibility to participate in the program, and it's only because it became very problematic within the last year or so. Students may not work during class, but if they do, it has to be pre-approved, and you apply the following codes on the timesheet if that's the case. But again, as a general practice, do not schedule students to work if they're scheduled to be in class. So it's again mandatory to scan and email copies of the student listings, timesheets, and class schedule to the work study email on the first of the month. Make sure you're checking they're not exceeding 20 hours a week. 8-hour day. Students have to take a 30-minute unpaid break after working 6 consecutive hours. There's no provision for overtime, holiday, or work during campus closures. If a student, say, is working for public safety, then the manager has to authorize the student to work on campus during these times. Timesheets must be signed by the student supervisor and the program administrator or the management team. Falsified timesheets are subject to termination and disciplinary action by the Office of Student Conduct and Ethical Development. Again, turn in timesheets by the day they are required. And if they're going to be late, let me know. So this is just an example of what the timesheet looks like. It's basically the same timesheet. The only difference is students will use a period instead of a colon when they're entering their time, and there is a new section here for them to download or make a copy of their class schedule to submit along with the timesheet. This is a copy of the calendar for the remainder of the year, and as you can see here, for the month of August, it includes the 31st. So these are the things you need to make sure students are reporting or not forgetting to report on there. September looks like the entire month, and for the remainder of the year, November will include December 1st. So sometimes they'll catch the end of the month, sometimes at the beginning of the month. For the month, usually it occurs when the months have 31 days in it. Again, you'll receive a copy of all of this after the session to reference to after the session today. Okay, so for any type of termination or separation from the program, final hours must be submitted to payroll within 72 hours, and that's usually students who are separating or withdrawing from the university. They're graduating, resigning. We need final hours submitted to WorkCity at the WorkCity email address when you submit them to payroll. And again, for off-campus, I do this on your behalf. And then this is just the AB 2410 states that basically these are student employees, they're real employees too, and if they are also eligible for their last check on their last day of employment, just like us. So notify the coordinator prior to terminating, which is an involuntary dismissal, especially the individuals that hire the instructional student assistants, because they are represented by a union, United Auto Workers, and you just cannot arbitrarily fire them. Although these are at-will positions for our regular student assistants, before termination, please contact me so we can work with payroll in issuing their final check as well. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over the hiring instructions before we start the demos on them. So basically every year, nothing's changed, but the student and supervisors need to complete the tutorials on the ITS website or supervisors can attend this Zoom session. New students search for jobs at the Career Center Handshake, right? Continuing, don't have to do that. The student will arrange a Zoom interview with the supervisor. The supervisor completes a QUALTRIC form to request a student. So this QUALTRIC is available on the work study website, plus we're also going to provide you the link in this PowerPoint as well. Basically, before you get started in doing the QUALTRICs, you need to provide the names of and emails of the student, supervisor, and your manager. So make sure all that information is readily available. It's going to ask you to provide the division, department, job code, and position number, and just a brief job description of the job responsibilities. You'll be asked to download your tutorial confirmation for both the student and the supervisor. So when you meet with your student and they're showing you their work study award, they also need to provide you a copy of their certificate of completion of the tutorial as well. The QUALTRIC survey cannot be completed unless this requirement has been fulfilled. Off-campus employers must download the email confirmation that they have completed this training. Plus, I'll also receive it on the roster. So you can maybe just send me an email or something saying, hey, I attended the Zoom session on August the 27th, and just attach it in the QUALTRICs. The form will be used to initiate a workflow to the student, supervisor, administrator that will include. So once you complete your request for a work study student, it'll come to the financial aid work study office, and then we're going to send the student, supervisor, and administrator the forms they're going to need to complete the hiring process. So everybody, all students receive the work authorization form, terms of employment, and the routing slip. The ISA students will receive an additional workflow, which is 2 now, that will include the description of duties form and the ISA contract letter. All parties must sign the required fields on each form before it can be forwarded to the next participant. So if something's missing, it will not allow the student to sign and submit to go to the supervisor who's next. Work study forms will be forwarded to the student employment to hire into PeopleSoft once the student, supervisor, and manager complete the hiring forms. Student employment will request HR forms and proof of eligibility to work from the student and schedule a Zoom interview for new hires. Student employment will also send you the copy of the routing slip that has their stamp that serves as confirmation that the student has been hired into PeopleSoft, which is our hiring system for the off-campus folks. So do not allow your student to start working until you receive that routing slip. Departments will be charged 100% of the student's wages if they allow their student to work before they are notified the student has been hired into our system. Okay, so next I am going to turn it over to Sarah to provide you an example of how to request a work study student. This is the direct link, but it is also available on the financial aid website under current or prospective students. It's like the first link under work study. They'll say request a work study student.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Garcia, and I work with ITS Training Services. And I'm going to go ahead and demo the QUALTRICS form that will initiate the hiring process. Now, this form has moved the process, which previously required all physical forms with wet signatures to be submitted. And to initiate this, you will need to fill out this QUALTRICS form. When you are ready to submit the hiring paperwork, please make sure you have all of the students' information readily available, so their name, their Coyote ID number, their email address, as well as their certificate of completion. And you will need your certificate of completion for attending today's session as well.
Sarah, this is Doris. I'm sorry to chime in. Can you clarify the student's email address that needs to be used?
Yes, so it would be their name alias. So you would not put in Coyote ID number at coyote.csusb.edu. You would put in the actual name alias. So for me, my student email address is garcs380@coyote. You would use that version. And you will see this example in the following pages. So as Patty said, the link to this form can be found on the financial aid work study site. And when you open it up, feel free to peruse this description. This is what I just described to you. So we're going to proceed with the demo by clicking next. First question you're going to be asked is if you have successfully completed the work study training. As attending today's session, you will get credit for this annual requirement. You will need to download the certificate for attending today, and that will be available to you through CSU Learn. So let's just say, for instance, that you did not successfully complete the training. If you chose no or not sure and you tried to proceed, you would be reminded to please visit the ITS Training Services registration page to complete that requirement. But as attending today, you have all fulfilled this, so you would choose yes. And then select next. And then you'll proceed with entering in all of the information. Now for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and use mine and Doris's information, but when you're filling this out, make sure you use your actual information and the student's information. And then you will be asked to upload a copy of the certificate. Again, you would download this from CSU Learn under your transcript for on-campus employers. If you're off campus, as Patty had said, you would just upload a copy of that email stating that you did successfully complete this training by attending today. And then I also wanted to mention that this training is an annual requirement. So if you have previously completed this training before August 1st of this year, that certificate will not be eligible for this requirement. The certificate must be dated on or after August 1st of this year. And the same would go for your student. If you tried to proceed without attaching the certificate, you would be prompted to please answer this and you will not be able to go past this page. So make sure you have that certificate downloaded before you start this process. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a copy of my certificate and then click next. And then you'll be asked to provide the administrator or MPP's information. I'm just going to put myself for this demo. And then this is where you'll need to put in the student's information. And then this is that example that I had previously mentioned, the student's official email address with their name alias. So again, mine was a portion of my last name, 380@coyote.csusb. You would not put 00123455@coyote.csusb. For this question right here, this is going to be the site where the student is employed, not where they're physically working because our campus is working majority remotely, but this is the actual site of employment. Now this first box here will determine which options are displayed in these menus here, and I'll go ahead and give you an example. If you were to choose on-campus federal work study student, this grouping list will filter to the administrative divisions on campus and their respective departments. Okay. If you were to choose off-campus ISA or on-campus ISA, this list again will filter to those groups that are only a part of this student employee type. So you'll want to make sure that you select the first grouping correctly, otherwise you will not see your site listed in these additional windows. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and just use America Reads as my example. And again, these lists filter to these previous selections. And then you'll be asked to provide the position and unit number and job code. These, again, are filtered for the specific student employee type that you selected. So once you're done with that, click Next. And then you'll be asked to provide a brief job description. This does not have to be word for word what was posted in the Handshake job posting. This is just a brief description, as I said, with a maximum of 200 characters. And as you type, The remaining character amount will be displayed down here. And then you'll need to upload a copy of the student's certificate. Now for this portion, I want to note that the student must provide this to you. You as their supervisor do not have access to download this yourself because the certificate is housed in the student's transcript. So the certificate can be downloaded from CSU Learning Bridge. This is our student pilot portal. And we have provided the navigation here for your student to obtain this information, but it's found in the exact same place where they completed the training. So, and again, just as the supervisor question, you will not be able to submit this form without uploading a copy of that. I'm going to go ahead and just upload my certificate again for this demo, and then click Next to finalize that. So once you have seen this thank you message, that means you have successfully submitted this form. And then we've also provided the contact information here for the work study team in the financial aid office if you have any questions. And upon submission of this, you will receive a confirmation email, and your student will as well. And that will start the Adobe sign process.
This part you're not going to see on your end. I'm just going to show you after you complete the request a work study student, the workflow will come to the financial aid office to initiate sending you the forms now. And again, this is nothing that you will be required to do. I'm just showing you. I am the work study office, so it'll automatically default to my email. And then Doris is the student, Doris is the supervisor, then we're making Sarah the program administrator or manager, and then you'll see that student employment will also be copied because ultimately at the end they're going to get a copy of all of this. So that's basically what I do on this end, and then I send it. So the next step is that it goes to the work study office. So last year we had supervisors complete this section, but now the financial aid office will complete this section. For our on-campus, all this information is the information that you provided here. We put in the position number based on the information that we received. We checked the students, the units for the fall term, and we entered 0 for spring. We have to make sure that the student tutorials the student supervisors tutorials are present in the QUALTRIC form that you sent us. If you don't send it, then we have to stop and let you know that, hey, you need to review it again. We also are verifying that the student is in good academic standards. But remember last year we had supervisors completing this section, so that will no longer be required. We're going to go ahead and do that for you. We're going to enter the name of the student. And then on this form, this is where you're going to see the student's work study award. $5,000 is the maximum, but not all students qualify for, $5,000.
All right, so I'm going to go to my email in my role as a student. And here's the email that I received. And it's just sending me a note not to skip any steps and to complete it, etc. So this is the initial email that reminds me that a request has been submitted. The next email, in the meantime, I just want to highlight a couple of things. On the federal work study page under current students, the form is at their website under current students, federal work study request to hire a FWS student. So if you click on that, that'll give you the form. We are currently updating the timesheet link. Currently, the timesheet link is looking at the timesheet that we used in the spring, but we should have it updated by tomorrow morning. This is the link where you'll register for the tutorials. This is the email as a student that's asking me to review and sign. So it's important, supervisors, that you remind your students to look for this email so that they can start the process. It's also very important when they're logging into Adobe Sign, and I'm going to repeat this because this is critical, that they use their student email with their name in it. Some students that were previously hired have a business email. That should work fine. The email that will not work is the Coyote ID at coyote.csusb. If your student does not know how to get that, they can get it in their personal information on student self-service. They can also call the Technology Center for assistance, but that is critical for students when they go to sign in. They do not use the correct email, it's going to throw everything off. You go into your company or school account. Couple of recommendations for the students is that they go ahead and use the start to begin to fill out the information. As you can see, it has the information that the Financial Work Study Office has filled out. It gives you a little cheat sheet, as most of you are familiar with. It gives you a tip.
So most students that are presently attending college right now probably have not earned their degree unless they're working on a master's. So they will, in Doris's case, she's indicating that she is a sophomore, so she will check the box that some college are in progress. If the student has received a degree, they could put, you know, the associate, bachelor's, or a master's degree. But in most cases, if they're just attending, you know, their current student, just indicating some college is sufficient. Next, Doris will be providing emergency contact information. And as a student in Part A, it's just basically they're providing their demographic information that needs to be entered into our PeopleSoft system. So they'll provide, you know, a parent, a friend, a relative's name and address in the event that an emergency occurs. And again, it mirrors the hiring process for Cal State employees. We also have to provide this type of information when we're getting hired as well. So right now, Doris is completing this from the student perspective, which is Part A, student demographics.
So now that I've completed entering some of that information, it requires that I enter, or it's asking me to enter an emergency contact. I've done that. I'm going to click on next. It recognizes that that's the wrong zip code. Once I click on next, it takes me to initial that I commit to at least a half-time status for the term. I click on next, it asks for my actual signature. Then it asks me to complete the process by clicking to sign, clicking on the blue button at the bottom of the screen. So this is my role as a student.
Now that the student has completed their portion of the work authorization in terms of employment, the workflow goes now to the supervisor. So this is going to be the part that you as a supervisor will be responsible in completing.
Yes. So I have a role as a supervisor, and that came on my personal email. So for our off-campus attendees today, this is helpful to know that if you're using an off-campus email, it should work just fine. I'm logged in to my Gmail account. It brought me right to the form as a supervisor. And now I'm going to fill out the supervisor information that's required.
So basically on this document, which is the work authorization form, supervisors are responsible for completing Part B and Part C. So this is some information you're going to need to find out from probably your budget person. as far as, you will know your Coyote ID, but you may not know your administrator's Coyote ID. But this information is required into our system because each Coyote ID is linked to the student that they're hiring. So for off-campus folks, since you do not have a Coyote ID, you can just skip that section. You see that the orange star is not there, so it's not a required field for off-campus, but it is a required for our on-campus supervisors. Again, as a supervisor, you'll need to identify who your timekeeper is for your department, their email, and have their phone or extension number as well. For our off-campus employers, this will be, I serve as your timekeeper, because remember, you turn in your timesheets to me, and then I submit them to the payroll office on your behalf. So the timekeeper will be Patricia Aguilera. I think most of you have my email, and you can put mine in there too if you want to, Doris. Is p.aguilar@csusb.edu, not P. Aguilar, because the campus does have a P. Aguilar, and we're always constantly getting each other's mail because of that. So for off-campus, again, I serve as your timekeeper. You'll use my email, and my extension is 3440. When Doris hits the next button, you will list the effective date. The first day the student can work was August the 17th, but if you're now just doing it and you have a set date of September 1st, you can put that. And right here, it'll show you, it'll turn in red if you do not complete the date correctly, but Doris did it correctly this time. And you'll see that now that we're on our semester system, all federal work study appointments end on May 31st, or if funds are exhausted by either the student or the work study program. This is the background section here. We covered this during the PowerPoint presentation. If this is a brand new student, they will require a background check if any of the following apply. If this is a rehire student, then you can go down to the rehire exemption and just click that button if there has not been a change in any of the student's duties. For the off-campus ISA program, we conduct or initiate the background checks for new tutors, but for the fall term, we're not having any new tutors, so you don't have to worry about that. And then lastly,
Patty, can I ask a quick question for the off-campus? Which selection would they make here?
If it's a tutor, America Reads America Counts, they would check the position requires being in regular or direct contact with minors. Except for the Adult Literary Center, then they can just be rehired.
Someone raised a hand. Kristen, did you need clarification? Christian Stutz?
Yes, thank you. Just quick question, would they be considered a rehire if they were a student assistant? Because we're, I think, considered the off-campus at SAIL. Would they be considered a rehire if they were hired through UEC the previous time, or would they be a new hire, like the previous year, or would they be a new hire because they're doing work study now?
They're going to be a new hire because UEC is independent of human resources, the state side.
Got it.
New hire.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. As far as signature, it's going to prompt the supervisor to sign. And then under the finance, okay, so Doris has signed as a supervisor. And she's additionally that she will verify the student's enrollment at the beginning of the spring, because remember I told you at fall or whenever we initiate the workflows, the financial aid office verifies that the student is enrolled in at least part-time status for both post-bac and undergraduate students. All right, and then under the finance chart stream fill, this is primarily for on-campus employers, including our off-campus, on-campus employers, which is like the sale department, Gear Up, Upward Bound, the student union. So if you are physically located on our campus, you need to provide a finance chart fill string, which will authorize me to go in and do a transfer of expenditures if you allow or permit your student to work in excess of their work study award. And I'm touched based on this earlier. So you need to provide the account, fund, program, department ID, class, project, grant code in this section. And it's showing required. Okay, for on-campus, and even though you may be SAIL, Upper Bound, Gear Up, Educational Talent Shirts, and or the student union, you need to provide that information in there. For our off-campus employers that are physically located off-campus, those are the school districts and the tutorial centers, just type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or any random number because it is a required fill. And what will happen is in the event that you allow a student to earn more than their work study award, you will be invoiced for 100% of the overage, and so will be on campus. So this is just information that we need, but if you all just work with me to prevent this from happening, say a student is going to end mid-month and earn their 5,000 award. If we have the additional funding, just contact me, and maybe I say they only need a couple $100 more to finish the month. If we have the funding and the student has room in their budget for an increase, I will work with you on a case-by-case basis to cover at least towards the end of the month if that's possible. But what you don't want to do is to allow your student to work over, because that's a big no-no. And again, then we have to do transfer of expenditures or invoicing off campus. When I am open, and if we can make it happen to cover the student a little longer, that's our first priority rather than having to charge you 100% of the overage. So supervisor signs and then click to sign. Okay, so that's the supervisor's part that they need to complete on the work authorization in terms of employment. So for our ISA off-campus employers, you're going to receive a second workflow that will contain the description of duty forms and the ISA letters. Again, it's the same process as last year, except you're going to receive your paperwork in two separate emails. So again, supervisors will just write down the term, fall or spring, the name of the supervisor, course title. You don't have to complete. Location is either Think Together, wherever the student will be physically working at the site. Work schedule, so the work schedule that the student will be working on. So if it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 4, then you write that in there. And then the employee will be the name of the student employee or ISA. So you will check off which boxes that apply. And basically this is their job duties. So as an ISA student, you cannot deviate from this. So just review with your student what the expectations are, check them off. And then if the supervisor will be performing a class operation, yes or no. And then the supervisor gets these forms first. So the supervisor will be required to sign and date it. And then they will be instructed to complete the contract letter. As employees of Cal State San Bernardino, you know how we have to sign an appointment letter? The same thing goes for the ISA students. So you'll put, dear, the name of the student. I'm pleased to offer you an appointment, and that's where the site where the student will be working. And again, this is, you know, some redundancy here, but again, these are the forms that the union needs, not us necessarily. So the hours per week will be a maximum of 20, their hourly rate, a minimum of $14. Their beginning date, we'll say 9/1, and then we already pre-populated. Everybody ends on 5/31, or if they run out of their work study first, they report to the name of the supervisor that completed the training. And then this will then go to the student to sign. So after the supervisor submits this, then the student will get the workflow. to basically review what the requirements are. They go in and sign, they come down here, review all of this, and then the student will accept their appointment. And then once that is completed, then the workflows will be forwarded to student employment to hire into our system, which is called PeopleSoft. So we did that. Again, here's just a copy again of the work authorization forms. Again, the financial aid office will be completing this section for you, so you don't have to. We'll verify the students' units. The tutorials have been completed. The student's in good standing. Part A is to completed by the student. This is just all demographic information. The work study award will be here. Take a mental note of it or write it down so you know when you create your spreadsheet, keep track of the student's monthly earnings, you subtract it from that. If there's any changes, because sometimes a student's award might get reduced, say they received a $1,000 scholarship, it may reduce their work study by $1,000. So we will notify you, we send you that revised allocation form whenever there's any changes. So then you'll have to update your spreadsheet. Part B and C, Part B and C is to be completed by the department or agency, or primarily supervisor, which again, make sure you have everybody's emails, Coyote IDs, phone numbers, and extensions before you start to complete the form, because you'll have to stop and ask for them. The background check is located in the middle here. If it's a brand new student, it's up to the supervisor to determine if a background check is necessary based on the type of work the student will be performing. If this is a rehire and there has been no changes in the student's job duties, you can just check off the rehire exemption. On the bottom, student and the program administrator have to sign. For on-campus, you have to provide your finance chart fill string. In the event the student goes over, authorize me to go in and take 100% of the overage and work study earnings. For off-campus, you'll just list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we will invoice you for 100% of the wages that the student went over. And this is just a nutshell. When you receive the terms of employment, we kind of went through it really quick because you just pretty much are prompt just to sign it, but make sure you take the time to read it. And if you don't read anything else on this document, read the rules and policies. Don't let the student work in excess of their award. Don't let them work during classes, etc. They're entitled to a 50-minute break. They're entitled to a 30-minute unpaid break. But you should read it all, but that is the most important, where we have students and supervisors that violate that. Again, I just touched base on the ISA letter for employers that hire the instructional student assistants that they need to complete, the description of duty forms that we just went over. And then finally, this is the routing slip that comes along with your form. So after student employment receives the hiring forms and they hire them into the system, they will send you confirmation. And usually, I don't know what it's going to look like this year, but they usually stamp their student employment that they received it, and then they will be responsible for sending this out to you, which serves as confirmation that your student has been hired and they can start working. So until you get this document, do not permit your student to work under the Federal Work Study Program because they haven't been hired yet. So this is contact information. Right now it's me, myself, and I. I'm the work study coordinator. Our office hours are 9 to 5 p.m. daily. Summer no longer applies. Because we're using Jabber right now, we could only sign up one line, so the supervisor line is not available. So we just kept the student line for both supervisors and students to call if they need to speak to somebody. This is our fax information, but like I said, we have a new work study email address that all the timesheets and everything can be just sent to us via email. I apologize up front for any delays in anything. But like I said, right now it's just pretty much just been myself for the last 4 months. But there is, a pot of gold at the end of my rainbow now that I know that somebody should be starting within the next couple of weeks. But again, we have a learning curve and we need to train the new individual. So I will probably still remain as your primary contact until the training has been completed. So this concludes the PowerPoint and demo session.